The journey is conversations with ordinary people about stories of transformation and how we may have had setbacks in our life and how we persevered through those, how we've learned from those obstacles, and how they've maybe helped us on our path today. Well, welcome to The Journey. My name is Kevin Polkey, and I am the host of The Journey. And today we are going to have a reflection on uh, an idea that I've talked about at different times, um, an idea um that I think foundationally it's an important thing for us to keep in mind. Imagine that you have a 16th ounce glass. And imagine that you have 8 ounces of 8 ounces of water in that 16 ounces of glass. Some of us are going to look at that and say that the glass is half full. And others of us are going to look at that glass and say that it's half empty. Both are going to feel that their observation of the glass, their perspective of the glass, and the contents of the glass is correct. As we know in reality, that they're both correct, or maybe they're both wrong. The reality is it's 8 ounces of liquid in a 16-ounce glass. The perspective of half full or perspective of half empty is just the story that we tell ourselves about the contents that are in that 16-ounce glass. Now, maybe there's a deeper layer to this, that if I say that it's half full, that someone may describe it as being an optimist or of seeing that life is a life of abundance. That I feel better when I look at things from a perspective of growth or strength. Where others would say, no, I prefer to look at it as half empty so that if something goes wrong, I'll be less disappointed. Um, that I look at it as half empty because maybe I think it should be have more in it than it does, or that I'm entitled to have more in it than it does. I know for me, there has been a time period in my life, not necessarily because I felt I was entitled to, but more from a protection standpoint or defense mechanism standpoint of wanting to avoid disappointment, that I would look at the glass half empty versus half full. That if I thought that if somehow I didn't get my hopes up about something, that somehow it would um, reduce the amount of disappointment that if it didn't work out. In my case, at least, that was not the case, is that not only was I looking at it half empty leading up to the event, but then when the outcome was less than I wanted or less than I desired, I was still hurt and disappointed in spite of trying to prepare myself for it not going as well as I wanted. Last week was an interesting week. As many of you know, I have been in the counseling field for over 35 years and in different capacities, from working corrections to working in addictions to a psychiatric hospital to working for a psychiatrist, a school social worker, and then the majority of the last 25 years has been in some level of clinical social work or clinical counseling for the last 25 years. I've met a lot of different individuals over that time, accompanied with the fact that being a competitive athlete in this community, going back to grade school and then middle school and high school, and then later being a competitive bodybuilder, which led opportunities to be a trainer as well. I got a phone call on Tuesday that I wasn't expecting to get from a former spouse of someone that I had trained in my late teens and early 20s. This individual had hired me to train him and teach him how to lift weights. He wanted to get into bodybuilding. He wanted to be bigger and stronger. And so we proceeded. He had hired me. I'm not 100% sure for how long, but the reason why she had contacted me, that she had just found out that her ex-husband, my former client, had died. He was 70 years old when he died, and she wanted to let me wanted to let me know about that. I was honored in the midst of our conversation that she had reached out to me after all these years. It was 35 plus years was the last time that I had trained him. I had seen him and seen them, over the last 30 plus years, but had not worked with him since that earlier time period. So I was honored that she would reach out and think of me, and then she proceeded to tell me about the impact or the seeds that I had planted with him, to the point where she had the minister contact me who was going to give the eulogy so that we could reflect back on that time period when I trained him, and what I thought about my interactions with him. So I was very honored from that perspective and humbled from the aspect of how some seeds were planted with this individual, and that he had, or they um, uh, had reflected on the that time period that I'd worked with him. A little over 24 hours later, my family and I were at a restaurant. We were just wrapping up, getting ready to leave, and we were going to go to my daughter's musical. An individual saw me as we were walking out, and he put out his hand to shake my hand, and I didn't recognize him, and so I shook his hand, and he asked me to confirm who I was, and I acknowledged that, and then he proceeded to then tell me that from his perspective I was responsible for him and his wife getting divorced, and then proceeded to uh, tell me. And at this point, I was not able to acknowledge anything about him. I didn't know the individual, didn't I? And he said who his ex-wife was, and that he believed that I was responsible for the dissolution of their marriage. And then uh, on top of it, he was using this with some derogatory language, because he appeared to be under the influence of alcohol. He then added in that this client had also passed away without acknowledging anything that he was saying for a variety of reasons, of confidentiality. I left the restaurant. Unfortunately, it weighed heavy on me, that interaction. It bothered me that not only did this person say what he was saying in regarding his accusations, which um, I believed were incorrect from the best of my recall, that but it weighed on me because of the negativity of the interaction and the accusations of what he had said. Even to the point when I was watching the musical, I was definitely in a different uh, frame of mind as I was watching my daughter on stage. Um, Thursday morning came, and I worked all day Thursday, and then Friday morning, as I was going through my normal morning ritual, routine and rituals of going through my the entry of Jesus Calling, and then a daily meditations through Ryan Holiday, and then I journal, do some meditation, and then journal. And during that journaling, I reflected on the story that I just shared about the two interactions with former spouses of individuals that I had interacted with in my throughout my life, or in my career, earlier in my career. That one reached out to me, went out of their way to reach out to me, grateful that the seeds that I had planted, and another one who had just happened to see me was giving a much different story about the impact that I had on their ex-spouse. As I reflected on it, I thought to myself, Kevin, if you're not going to be overly letting the first situation with the individual that I trained who had passed away, um, if you're not going to let that go to your head and thinking that you're somehow some, elevated individual because you helped this person they remember so many years later, then why is the other one bothering you as well? They're both just perspectives on individuals' observation of an impact or work that I had done with somebody. In both cases, they were ex-spouses. In both cases, they were their perspective about the impact that I had on their life. What it allowed me to do in that moment is step away from the emotional aspect of those two interactions and see that it was just a perspective, that it was just a perspective like a 16-ounce glass with 8 ounces of liquid. It's a story that we tell ourselves about what we're looking at, not good or bad, just a story that we tell ourselves, or we may tell others as well. For me, similar to something that I had shared earlier today, when life challenges you, it's not trying to break you, it's trying to reveal your inner strength. Let me read that again. When life challenges, it's not trying to break you, it's trying to reveal your inner strength. As you go throughout this week and you're interacting with individuals or thoughts come to you about a 16-ounce glass with 8 ounces of liquid, what is the story? What is your perspective about something? Are you looking at it from a life-giving or life-taking perspective? Are you bringing that to someone else and wanting to point something else out to them, to honor them, or to lessen them? Either way, if you are on the delivering end or on the receiving end or the observation end of that, I think what most is important is for you to keep it in perspective, that it's just a story that we're telling ourselves and possibly telling others. As always, I appreciate you being here. Look forward to being with you next week. And if you believe anyone could benefit from hearing this today, I encourage you to share and like it. Thank you very much.